So Warhammer 40,000 just did a crossover event with Magic the Gathering, and I got to play a couple matches with these new decks and wanted to tell you about them. So I'll break this video down into 3 sessions. The first is what are these decks? The second is what are they as far as like collectability, like what comes in the box you actually buy, and what are the prices for them. And there's a special collector's edition we'll talk about too. And third is from a Magic player's perspective, are they fun decks and are they powerful decks? Like, are they actually competitive or not? So these are part of Magic's Universes Beyond series, which is where they did a license from another product and bring that over into Magic the Gathering. So these can either be old cards, like cards that already are out, and they just kind of reskin them, like putting pictures of whatever the other universe is, in this case Warhammer 40,000, onto that card. Or they'll come up with completely new original cards that match that universe. Typically, these will just be a couple cards in a pack, but in this case, they're full-out commander decks, so 100 cards. And these are made in really limited runs, so they'll make them for like a month or two, and that's it. You'll never see them again. So if you're a Warhammer player, you might not even know what this means, but these decks typically aren't legal in Standard, and some of the cards are legal. I think the reprints with the new art you can still run if they're already Standard legal, but if not, you can just use them in stuff like Vintage or Commander. They should be legal there. So there's 4 options of what decks you can buy out of the Warhammer set. The first is the Imperium of Man. So these have things like your classic Space Marines. They have Sisters of Battle, AdMech, stuff like that, anything you'd see in the Imperium. So this deck has a lot of ways of making tokens, and most of those tokens are going to be Astartes warriors, but it would work with a warrior tribal if you were going for that. The other thing this deck does is let you sacrifice your creatures to gain more power, which that's kind of standard for the Imperium being the good guys. They're definitely willing to sacrifice lives, so that kind of fits right in. So the next deck is Chaos, which is mostly going to be demons and the Chaos Space Marines. So this has 2 different mechanics. The first one is it is a demon tribal. So a lot of ways create demons and then buff demons. And the other thing is Cascade, which is when you play a card, you get to go through your library to find a card that costs less and play it for free. So it kind of fits that unpredictability of Chaos. So I will say with the Chaos deck though, it has a couple different mechanics within the deck, which isn't always a good thing in Magic the Gathering. You kind of want your deck to have one theme and really double down on it in most cases. So my friend that bought this deck actually split it into a Demon Tribal and a Cascade deck. So it has a lot of really cool and powerful cards, but it might take some work to really hone in on one theme. So next up we have Necrons, which obviously is just Necrons. So it's a mono black artifact deck. And because it's one color and artifact, it's really easy to modify. Like, if you want to get a deck and tweak it a little bit, this deck is really good for that. It has a bunch of really powerful cards. The main mechanics, besides being artifacts, is it has a lot of ways of putting stuff into the graveyard, and then it plays really heavily out of the graveyard, which Necrons in the 40k lore have their reanimation protocol, where when they die, there's a chance of them just coming back to life. So it really fits that theme well. So I really like thematically what they did here. And then the deck I bought was Tyranids. So it has the normal Tyranids and the Gene Stiller Cult. So it is heavier towards the Tyranids, but it does have a decent amount of Gene Stiller Cult. So what this deck does is it ramps up, like it gives you a bunch of draw and land mechanics, and then it's all about spending as much mana as possible on big bad creatures. So most of these cards let you choose what mana costs you spend. And then they get +1/+1 counters equal to that. So they get more powerful the more lands you use on them. And they have an ability where if you spend 5 or more, you get to draw a card. So it really helps you keep cycling and just keep getting bigger and bigger creatures on the field. So it's a very straightforward deck. But that's kind of how Tyranids would work. They would keep getting resources and biomass and keep getting bigger and bigger and more powerful. So it kind of fits. So now that we covered the basis of what each deck is, let's actually look at what you get when you buy it. So obviously, you get your cards, it's a 100 card deck, but there are 2 different versions of it. One is normal, and the other is the collector's edition. So what sets the Collector's Edition apart is it's all Surge foil, which is a new way of foiling the cards. It does look really cool. So if you're not going to open it and you just want it as a collectible, or if you're only going to run the deck as is, the Surge foil is awesome. So the reason I said run it as is the Surge foil is actually thicker than a normal Magic card. So you can actually tell when you're looking at a deck if you would draw a foil card or a non-foil with this type of foiling. So for casual play with your friends, I don't think it really matters. But if you were going to a tournament with it, they could accuse you of cheating. So just know that is an issue. Don't plan to miss your Surge foil and your regular cards, or even that with regular foil. So I will say these two decks have drastically different price ranges. The normal decks are anywhere between $65 and $80, but the Collector's Edition is around $200. So if you're going to play the deck and it's going to have wear and tear, or if you want to modify it, you definitely want the normal one. But if you just want it to sit on a shelf like for a backdrop, the Collector one is pretty cool, but it is a lot more money, so it kind of depends on if that's in your budget or not. I'm not going to really comment on investing in Magic cards. I don't know anything about it, honestly, so anything I would say would just kind of be making stuff up. So around $70 for a Commander deck is pretty high. A lot of the normal ones go anywhere between $25 and $50, but I think it's awesome that they're Warhammer themed. Obviously, I love Warhammer 40,000. I have an entire channel that mostly talks about it, so I'm willing to pay that premium. And they do have a 4-deck bundle, which I think is around $200, where you get all 4 decks. That is the normal ones. I know they did have a 4 bundle of the Collectors. I have no idea what it costs. It's probably outrageous right now. Like I said earlier, they do make these in a limited run, so if you really, really want one, it's probably better to buy it now rather than later, just because they're going to be hard to find. So as far as the artwork and how the cards actually look, I think they're awesome. I had a ton of fun looking through and seeing all the Warhammer references, and seeing how my favorite Warhammer characters and models were brought over into Magic was great. I love seeing fandoms cross over like this, so it was right up my alley. Besides that, they do come in a little deck box, and it is oversized because it's Commander deck. So it fits your deck and all of your little tokens and all the little extras it comes with. But if you do put sleeves on your cards, which I imagine a lot of people will, it won't fit all of that extra stuff that comes with it. So it will still fit in the box, just not with all the little tokens and stuff. So you'll get a big cardboard token and a big cardboard token of your commander. This is pretty nice because it helps you track how many times your commander has been summoned. I just keep a dice on mine, and I'll rotate it every time I resummon my commander, just so I can keep track of what his cost should be. And then you'll get some smaller tokens. Some of them will have your fashion symbol, and some will just have the magic symbol. You also get some cards that are your creature tokens. Like for the Tyranid deck, they had stuff like the Gaunts and the Gargoyles and the Warriors. And I know the Imperium one has the Space Marines. One thing I thought about with these is I know you can find pictures of them online, and you could pretty easily Photoshop pictures of your actual miniatures onto them. So you could actually take your regular Warhammer 40,000 army or kill team and put it onto your Magic card. And finally, you have a life counter that goes up to 40 with your commander on it. So I thought this was a pretty nice touch. I didn't know that it actually came with this, so I was pretty happy when I saw it. I've been using it in basically all my Magic games now, and it is a lot nicer than just random dice there, especially because I'm stupid and I'll just grab my life dice and roll with them, or use them as counters and then just totally forget where I was at when I'm playing casually with friends. So it's nice to have an actual life counter to use. Like, I have no idea why I hadn't bought one before. Now that I have it, I absolutely love it. From a narrative perspective, I think the themes of the decks fit the fashions pretty well. So as far as competitive, I'm not really a competitive player. I've played in tournaments before, I've played competitively, not for a while though, and never actually in Commander, but I know these decks would not be competitive. They're mostly slower ramping decks, and competitive Commander is very quick. But for casual with friends, it kinda depends on how serious your friends are. So most of my friends could be tournament playing Magic players if they wanted to. Like, everyone's really good, everyone has a really solid understanding of the core mechanics of the game. But we don't actually play like that. Like, one of my friends has a deck that's entirely themed around cats. He just tried to make it as good as he could. So we like to pick a theme and build a deck around it, and we build very thematic decks most of the time. And we kind of like that slower ramping, giant creatures, a bunch of crazy stuff going on, so we kind of try to build like that. That's kind of our group meta that we artificially slow down. Like the Tyranids, I've won some 1v1 games with it with no modification, but it probably has like a 40%, like 35-40% win rate, which isn't awesome, but it's not zero. Like my Tyranid deck, I changed out probably, I think it was like 4 or 5 cards, and it helped a ton. In my friend's deck, they took the core of the Magic decks, swapped in the other stuff. It still has the same theme and plays basically the same. You still have a ton of Warhammer cards in there, but it's way more competitive. I would even say you could take it to a tournament and do decent. I don't think you're gonna win with some slight modification, but you'll at least be able to have fun. And on a final note here, for beginner decks, these decks aren't overly complicated. If you love Warhammer, you are interested in Magic and want to start into it, this is a fun way to do it. For about 60-70 bucks, you end up with a decent starter deck. So hopefully if you were considering buying one of these decks, this kind of helps you know what it is and helps you make an informed decision. I try to keep it pretty simple. So if you bought one of these decks and modified it or are playing it as is, let me know what you think down in the comments, and thank you for watching.